Hello friends and viewers, and welcome to my Kvare character guide. If you are here for a quick reference, I've created a pocket guide for the beginning of the video. My name is James, and today's video is sponsored by Sword of Convallaria. If you're a Sword of Convallaria player and you enjoy watching in-depth character guides and high-level battle replays, please consider supporting me by subscribing to this channel. If you haven't already, you and your friends can download Sword of Convallaria today through the link in the description below. Kvare's trait is Roster. Kvare will possess an additional skill, Roster, on his action bar. This is an instant skill that costs 2 energy. Roster, the active skill, inflicts the Roster and life loss debuffs on enemies without Roster for 3 turns. This can be used up to 1 to 2 times per round, depending on star level. And when using the skill Roster for the first time each turn, can refund 0 to 2 energy, again depending on star level. Roster, the debuff effect, inflicts 2 random level 2 debuffs on the target for 2 turns. Additionally, when the Roster debuff ends or when the target is attacked and enters the dying state, Kvare immediately summons an assassin to attack the character, dealing 100% of Kvare's magic attack as piercing damage, then removes Roster. This cannot be dispelled or immunized. Finally, when Roster is removed from enemy targets, Kvare's attack and defense will increase by 5% up to 20%, lasting until the end of battle. At the end of Kvare's turn, he will also cast a Roster skill on the closest enemy without Roster within 5 tiles of him. Kvare's initial skill is Conviction. This is a single target skill with a range of 1 to 4 tiles, costs 2 energy, and has a 0 turn cooldown. It deals 100% of magical attack as life loss and inflicts the move 1 and speed 2 debuffs on the enemy target for 2 turns. If cast on targets with Roster, Conviction will dispel all their buffs before attacking and additionally deal damage equal to 100% of Kvare's magical attack. The duration of the inflicted life loss from this skill is reduced by 1 turn. In other words, casting Conviction on enemies with Roster will immediately inflict 1 turn of life loss damage they would have taken without Roster. At rank 1, I recommend Will of Victory. This is a selection of 6 skills, cycled from top to bottom per the tooltip, and alternates between an instant support skill and a non-instant damage skill. This is not a decision skill, and each skill can only be cast once per battle. Starting with Will of Victory, an instant skill which grants potential burst to the target, followed by Flaming Winds, dealing 60% fire AoE damage to enemies within range and inflicts 2 stacks of ignition, Fortune of All, an instant skill which covers all energy of the target, Chill of Ocean, dealing 100% ice AoE damage to enemies within range and inflicts frostbite, Golden Power, an instant skill which recovers all HP of the target, and finally, Wrath of Thunder, a single target attack dealing 180% damage, dispels all buffs on the target and immediately triggering Roster and all damage overtime effects before attacking. Kvare's other option at rank 1 is Unforgettable Erosion. Unforgettable Erosion debuffs 1 random enemy within 3 tiles with 2 random level 1 attribute debuffs and also inflicts life loss. Level 1 attribute debuffs are quickly made redundant when you have level 2 or higher attribute debuffs in your party. Additionally, using this passive requires Kvare to play within 3 tiles of enemies. As you will learn from later down Kvare's skill tree, he possesses skills that have a max range of 4 tiles, and his ultimate skill, This is the Moment for Rain, has a 6 tile radius. To recap, I recommend Will of Victory at rank 1 for its versatile damage and utility options and its skill ceiling. Unforgettable Erosion's effects are easily made redundant and again restrains Kvare to play within 3 tiles of enemies to be effective. At rank 3, your options are Victory Before Battle or Kvare's Gift. With Victory Before Battle, Kvare recovers 20% HP and 1 energy and gains 2 random level 2 buffs anytime an enemy with Roster is defeated. This is easy to utilize at low star levels, but recall that Kvare refunds energy when casting Roster at higher star levels, so the energy recovery may become redundant. Kvare's Gift is an active ability that can only be used once per battle. This skill heals the target for 40% of his magical attack and causes the target to share 50% of damage taken, with a single share not to exceed 70% of his max HP for 2 turns. On enemies, this will inflict stun for 1 turn, and for allies, it will grant them the attack 2, damage 2, and damage reduction 2 buffs for 2 turns. Kvari's gift may be used to set up burst damage on short maps, share damage against a lethal single target attack, or used for objective-based maps, but it is still hindered by its single use per battle. My pick here at this rank is Kvari's gift. At rank 5, your options are Entrapping or Sanctuary Emblem for his reaction skill. Entrapping decreases damage taken by 8% from active attacks and steals 2 random attribute buffs from the target, thus providing mitigation and cleanse utility. With Sanctuary Emblem, when Kvare is hit by an AoE attack, he grants all allies within 2 tiles of him an absorption shield corresponding to the damage type, equal to 30% of his HP for 2 turns. This skill is contingent on being hit by AoE attacks and can only trigger each shield type once per battle. This reaction skill will excel when you are proactive against sources of AoE physical and magical damage. Additionally, when playing this skill, HP becomes a throughput stat as the shield scales with Kvare's HP. The more HP Kvare has, the greater the value his external shields will be. Notably, when Kvare possesses a shield, damage taken is reduced by 10%. This effect does apply if shields come from external sources. My pick at this rank is Sanctuary Emblem. At rank 7, your options are Arcane Toxins or Dark Withering. Arcane Toxins is a source of magical damage and inflicts 3 random level 2 attribute debuffs, but its energy cost contests with Roster and Conviction. Additionally, Roster is already inflicting level 2 debuffs. By Voyager level 35 and beyond, you should be learning to be comfortable with inflicting guaranteed sources of attribute debuffs or using Disaster Bottle. Dark Withering is an AoE skill that inflicts life loss and reduces healing received to all targets hit, but it is set back by its 5-turn cooldown. Both skills are unlikely to be part of Kvare's regular skill loadout. Consider your selection based on the HP or defense stat increase. My pick here is Arcane Toxins. At rank 9, your options are Infectious Attack or Silencing Attack. Infectious Attack applies 1 stack of Infection. Silencing Attack blocks active skills for 2 turns when attacking injured targets. Kvare will infrequently cast basic attacks throughout battle, most likely when he has less than 2 energy or when This is the Moment for Rain is on cooldown, so the overall impact of your decision here is minimal. If you cannot decide, consider your selection based on the HP or defense stat increase. My pick here is Silencing Attack. At rank 11, I recommend This is the Moment for Rain with the Castalia for Wither. This is the Moment for Rain deals 40% of magical attack as piercing damage to all enemies within 6 tiles of Kvare, triggering and removing all damage over time effects on enemies hit. If enemies hit have the roster debuff, then this skill additionally inflicts 4 debuffs. Piercing Vulnerable 2 blocks reaction skills, blocks passive skills, and Isolate for 2 turns, and triggers and removes roster after attacking. Wither is a passive skill that modifies This is the Moment for Rain and adds a life loss passive effect. By using Wither, This is the Moment for Rain no longer triggers and removes damage over time effects on enemies hit, but instead increases damage by 100%. Further, when actively dealing damage with non-instant skills, Kvare will additionally inflict 60% of magical attack as life loss for 1 turn. This sample skill build here is primarily AoE damage focused, casting This is the Moment for Rain on cooldown, then casting Will of Victory or Roster whenever This is the Moment for Rain is unavailable. This skill setup focuses more on single target damage with Conviction. For your 3rd skill slot, substitute for whatever you selected at rank 3 or rank 7. For weapons, some competitive options include Nightmare Puppet, Diffusing Prism, and Starry Sky Heritage. Nightmare Puppet is Kvare's astral imprint, granting a passive attack and HP increase. After dealing damage, the weapon inflicts 1 random level 1 debuff on the target. If using a debuff skill, the effect changes. After attacking, inflicts 1 random level 1-2 debuff and Nightmare Puppet 1-3 for 2 turns. Nightmare Puppet is a debuff that increases piercing damage taken by 5 to 15%. This cannot be dispelled or immunized. If Nightmare Puppet is unavailable or inaccessible to you, Diffusing Prism is a fine option for its magical attack and piercing damage increases. Additionally, recall that Kvare will boast higher HP due to his trait. As such, Starry Sky Heritage is a reasonably strong option. For trinkets, Origin Hourglass is a good option for its attack increase. Additionally, with Kvare's high base speed, he will benefit from having immunity to movement and speed debuffs as well. As a ranged unit who should ideally avoid taking damage, Shield of Justice is another good option when Kvare can maintain high uptime on the physical shield. This can also help his uptime on Sanctuary Emblem's 10% damage mitigation effect as well. For Teros, because Kvare gains attack and defense when enemies with roster are defeated, this incentivizes deploying him on maps with multiple enemies. As such, his trait pairs nicely well with Temptation of the Devil. For a general option, Course of Fortune is a versatile and hybrid choice for damage, healing, mitigation, and energy recovery. The AoE piercing damage trigger will benefit from Kvare's piercing vulnerable debuff. For Engravings, as a ranged unit with several long-range skills, Sword and Pinnacle is a reasonable option when Kvare is able to avoid damage and remain unharmed. Otherwise, Sword and Wand is a fine combination and a comfortable pick. To provide some composition and usage tips, Kvare and Nightmare Puppet are one of the first appearances of inflicting debuffs that increase piercing damage taken. Consider teaming him with other piercing damage dealers such as Agata and Karis. Similarly, Kvare is a piercing damage dealer himself, so also consider teaming him with units that buff piercing damage like Tyre. Kvare is part of the Night Crimson, Iria, and Fortitude categories. Consider building a team with him using Layla's, Dentalian's, and/or Magnus's leader's auras. For a quick overview of external category buffs, Layla's Night Crimson aura provides 12% damage to all Night Crimson allies. Dentalian's aura provides 20% more damage to enemies with 3 or more debuffs. Kvare can easily contribute to the debuff count with his whole skill kit. Magnus's aura decreases damage taken when healthy and enables Kvare to become immune to the negative effects of injured. This is a great aura to further increase his survivability. That concludes this character guide. If you have any feedback to share with me, please leave a comment below. I'm open to listening and being wrong. I'm another player improving and learning more about Sword of Convallaria just like you are. Remember, if you find conflicting information to other guides or content creators, then that means there are multiple ways to build a character and still achieve success. Finally, my social media contacts are displayed here to connect with me as well. Last but not least, I want to credit and shout out these resources for helping me put together this character guide. Voyage Memento for character build samples and reference links, the No Potion fan site for skill images and skill descriptions, and the Billy Game site for character art assets. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.